They are the Interreligious Coordinating Council in Israel. For those of you who are not familiar with this organization, it is an umbrella organization of more than 60 institutions in this country who seek in one way or another to promote interfaith or intercultural understanding among the inhabitants of this land. I partially am here in that capacity, also second body, Beit Shmuel, and Third Hebrew Union College, both of them I would imagine well known to the audience. And finally, Tchila, התנועה החילונית הישראלית ליהדות הומנית, the Israel Secular Movement for Humanistic Judaism, of whom one of our speakers this evening, others of that body. And the evening involving a Muslim, a Christian, and a Jewish participant is Jerusalem, City of Many Faiths, which is a statement in and of itself. Or, namely, what they are not. None of them are the individual speakers who were originally advertised for this evening. And to move us into the evening, at least from my perspective, I think that one of the core problems in the relations of Jews, Christians, and Muslims in this city, which we are going to speak about this evening, is that for the most part, each one of us, and I include myself in that, Jews, Christians, and Muslims, each one of us tends basically to define the other, not in terms of what the other is, and how the other defines him or herself, but rather in terms of what the other is not. Namely, not I. Jews look at others as non-Jews, which says nothing about the others. Christians often see others as non-believers, non-Christians. And Muslims too often relate to others as non-Muslims. Again, relating to others for what they are not, and not for what they are.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Racing, for this very fine introduction. I indeed, too, had the great pleasure of talking to Mr. Racing last night over the phone and of meeting him in person today. The introduction can be taken as a point of departure for our discussion tonight, in my view. First, however, I want to very strongly apologize for arriving late here this evening, for keeping you waiting. Unfortunately, as is the case most often in such circumstances, the issue was not totally under my control. Part of the reason does not have to do with our evening tonight. The driver of the cab was a little bit late, but not in a manner to effectuate, I think, the time of my arrival here. Another part of the reason, which directly has some bearing on our evening tonight, is an issue to which I will return later. The checkpoint on the way to Jerusalem, to mention just briefly, and the traffic jam it created, luckily did not hinder my arrival here tonight, but rather bothered it and somewhat delayed it. I said luckily because the checkpoint and the soldiers who were manning it, I don't think were desirous to let me cross, because I do have the great pleasure to share this evening with you. I don't think they would think of that, but simply because I happen to carry a citizenship that facilitates for me to enter the checkpoint. I've been a Palestinian who only carries another document. Without any doubt, it would have been quite complicated, if not impossible, for me to arrive here tonight to share this evening. Number one, I do want to strongly apologize for this late arrival. Secondly, I want to quite genuinely express deep thanks and gratitude for the organizers of this evening tonight. True, in part, for inviting me here, but more importantly, for the sheer organization of the evening around the idea to be discussed. Developments regarding any event, issue, piece of land, a group of individuals, i.e. a people, can be brought about abruptly or forcefully only through human communication and human openness can we all, regardless of our varied personal backgrounds, perhaps political ideologies, perhaps geographic locations, and perhaps political affiliations, we arrive in a true manner at the belief that we all belong to the human family, to the one and same human family. Colors of our skins might be different. Our beliefs might compete, might be weakened or strengthened, but our uncontestable common denominator resides in this very simple yet complicated fact that we do belong to the same and one human family. Thus, I do want to stress my deep gratitude for the organizers of this evening for making it happen, as much as it contributes to the deepening of understanding between us all regarding Jerusalem and other underlying related issues. It does further the conviction of what I stated earlier regarding our common denominator. Thirdly, I do want to convey to the participants and to the attendants the warm greetings on the one hand of Mr. Faisal Hosseini, and on the other hand to express his sincere apologies for not being able to make it due to involvements which took him out of the country. Lastly, I will begin. The ways in which Jerusalem can be viewed and discussed are too multiple to enumerate or even to entertain the thought of touching upon. In brief, however, Jerusalem is an idea containing land whose size changes from time to time, an idea containing people whose religions might differ, whose backgrounds might differ, but nonetheless remain to be people. More clearly, though, Jerusalem, the center of political gravity of the world at large. Jerusalem is that idea that resembles the heart of the thorniest conflicts in human history, and that at the same time reiterates and mirrors the best ideals of human peace. Jerusalem is that contestable idea, nonetheless, by people who don't understand something about it, not by ones who do not desire to have a share of it, by strangers who are not ameen to the geography, the atmospherics, and the realities of the city, but rather by people who, in their individuality and in their political makeup as groups, want to hold on to this idea with exclusivity and with detriment to everybody else. Therefore, if that portrait, very briefly painted here, of Jerusalem suggests anything, it does suggest a powerful contestation over that idea, which is the jewel that jewel is the attraction of war makers, and that jewel is at the same time, with equal vigor, the gravity of those who devote their lives in a worth of peace. Needless to say that throughout human history, Jerusalem, more than any other locale I can think of, has led human cultures and human civilizations, invaders, visitors, researchers, travelers, and walkers by, its heart and body, is again more than any other place in the world. What counts is not, in my view, the actuality of numbers of people who made it to Jerusalem throughout human history. Really is significant to bear in mind is this heated desire, is this unusually powerful magnitude in the people, in the minds of all of those who had a chance, as invaders or visitors, as dwellers or observers, to make it to Jerusalem, and, equally important, to desire to make it to Jerusalem. My point is rather simple. Jerusalem has been throughout human history as we know it, indeed a center of human and political gravity in a manner unfound and unknown in any other place on the face of this earth. In its current years, as was the case in previous eras, Jerusalem has become a very difficult issue to think about, to deal with quietly, consciously, and yes, understandably by all involved. Not too new of an idea here to remind ourselves that from the official standpoint of Israeli policymakers, Jerusalem, and only Jerusalem, is that unified, eternal capital of Israel. It's one city for one people and forever. Words are uttered by individuals who devote their nights and days for policy making. It is not too difficult then to assume that their words count and that their words, at least the ones publicly said and heard, are only the tip of the iceberg as far as Jerusalem is concerned. At the same time, the vantage point of the policy makers of other societies involved in and with Jerusalem in the region, i.e. the Middle East, are utterances to the effect that Jerusalem and only Jerusalem, although not put into effect thus far for all sorts of reasons, is the only religious, spiritual, and henceforth political capital of the Muslim world. I need not go over the details of such utterances, but rather some pertinent policy makers in the Middle East. Yet, there is another tendency in the Middle East shared by some Israelis, some Palestinians, some Arabs, some Christians, and some Muslims. This tendency, it is true, is still in a fragmentary stage. Its effectuation has not been felt as the two other tendencies have been. According to this tendency, Jerusalem, because of its historical, because of its demographic, political, economic, and religious, spiritual, is the center of all three religions. Facts on the ground only prove it. Jerusalem houses the Aqsa Mosque, the Holy Sepulchre, and the Wailing Wall. Jerusalem also houses believers who are Christians, Muslims, and Jews. Jerusalem, above all, is and cannot be except an all-inclusive value. Exclusivity of or within Jerusalem leads but to further exclusivity. As I suggested a moment ago, that tendency, albeit vital, important, and must be loudly heard and materialized, allow me to say, is still fragmentary. It is fragmentary not because of weaknesses, scholarly, professional, or intellectual, or inner worth on the part of its adherents. It is rather fragmentary because of the seemingly innate complexities, obstacles, and indeed at times seemingly insurmountable obstacles erected in the way of this all-inclusive value. I do not know how helpful it will be to enumerate some of these barriers, obstacles, and complexities. Talking about some of them for the sheer sake of raising them is inconsistent with views and with my life. Talking about them in order to highlight them so that they can be, as barriers, done away with, is perhaps what I intend to do. There are several levels to which I would like to turn. My actual fear is that the time, which is quite an invaluable commodity, will not allow it. Therefore, you would allow me if I just go over some of these levels very, very briefly for now. Number one. It was not too long ago, actually less than 2 weeks, that the world has witnessed the evolution of yet another thorny complexity in the bottom of this heart we agreed to call Jerusalem. Weeks ago, the Republican majority leader in the U.S. Senate, Robert Dole, has succeeded to get the Senate to pass a resolution which was too difficult to pass in the past in order to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Not only has the resolution in its verbiage and in its effectiveness made it rather difficult for the American President Bill Clinton to pocket veto it, it has rather underlined old and new realities simultaneously about thought processes pertaining to Jerusalem. That move, that intent to move the capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem has been floating around for quite some years. Almost each and every American presidential candidate has entertained the thought. The moment he got to office, wisdom has prevailed. It was realized that moving the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem would indeed destroy any remnants of peace and would also rupture any possibilities of further future peace between Jerusalemites and between the main contenders to the conflict. But Dole, in his wisdom, has succeeded indeed to lead the Senate to this unflagging results. The passage of the resolution does not mean another legal testimony of the alliance between the United States and Israel on the strategic level. It more importantly means the opening of a new complicating chapter of what I might call the intent of this evening tonight, which is the removal of barriers, those that are artificial in nature, between all who indeed veer towards Jerusalem, Christians, Muslims, and Jews. I can see that my time is almost up. Is okay. There is a lot more to be said on this, but to go back to the local scene, to the local level, okay, I want to suggest to you that the closure or the separation between Jerusalem and the rest of the occupied territories has more than anything else to do, indeed, with the intent determined to prevent coalescence between the three faiths. A lot more so than having to do with any security is primarily the fact that those Christians, those Muslims who have spiritual memories, who have some blood existence through relatives or collegial foundations through friends in Jerusalem, not make it to Jerusalem. Not because, in my view, they do pose a security threat to the architects of this lousy and indeed assuredly failing policy, but rather in order to have an individualized, rather exclusively defined view of Jerusalem from quite a very narrow perspective, political perspective. It will not lead to the furtherance, it does not, as it cannot lead to the furtherance of security considerations, as we all know. It rather to the unfortunate deepening of separation between the three faiths, where it should be strengthened, protected, and guarded against at all cost. Thank you very much. I was born Muslim. I had absolutely no control over it. I look at it retrospectively. I often say to myself that this was an accident of birth. An accident of birth. I had no control whatsoever over the biochemical makeup, of course. civilizational, cultural, religious makeup of my birth. It was only an extension of a long-lived familial heritage. I was born Muslim because my parents were Muslims. At the same time, I was born with many other qualities which are not the subject matter discussion for this question. But the most other important quality, or if you would, characteristic with which I was born, in addition to being a human being, was the fact of being Palestinian. I think I would really lie to you publicly here if I were to say that sheer fact or sheer accident of birth, of being born Muslim, has really made out of me a devout Muslim. It has not. In the religious sense, it has not. However, as I grew up, as a child, certainly I had to go through a whole series, a whole process of socialization. In other words, I was acclimated into the culture in which I was born. That culture was with all sorts of characteristics, as I mentioned earlier, partly Muslim, partly Palestinian, partly growing up under extremely dire circumstances in a refugee camp, partly growing under occupation, partly growing with all sorts of characteristics. Now, of course, that process of socialization incorporated in its evolution the various factual realities and cognitive realities pertaining to the subject of to the subject of discussion to which we devoted ourselves tonight, that is Jerusalem. Indeed, Jerusalem, in the cultural and civilizational sense. Yes, I'm coming to that, indeed. Yeah, sure, indeed. In the cultural and civilizational sense, it's quite live and rife. In the religious sense, of course, I see from my father, I see from plentiful other people I interact with or happen to communicate with. Jerusalem to them is the heart of the heart. You may have really caught me red-handed if I could not enumerate various religious prayers on that, since truly I'm not an expert on that. But I can certainly say that hardly in no prayer, in no moment of solace between a devout Muslim and God has Jerusalem been absent. This leads me to even indicate that for many of these devout Muslims, Jerusalem, of course, was the first place to which they directed their prayers. In other words, now Muslims, when they pray, they face up or they face Mecca. That's where the Kaaba is. But before the Kaaba, it was Jerusalem. I'm talking really about the idea rather than the longevity of the idea. I mean, certainly, there were reasons why the Kaaba why that facing was shifted to the Kaaba. But the fact of the matter is that Jerusalem was the first place. Now, with the shift to Mecca, the significance of Jerusalem certainly did not disappear. It continued to be alive, albeit with different new connotations. Secondly, many people now, many devout Muslims now, who are not allowed to reach Jerusalem because of the infamous checkpoints. Indeed, find other routes to arrive to the city in order to pray. A prayer at the Aqsa Mosque equals a great number of many prayers. 50 after all, thank you. 50 prayers. And they come through very, very difficult routes. They come through a route which I have no doubt in my mind, allow me to say, I have no doubt in my mind that none of you had to travel. It is called the Valley of Fire Road. So that's in brief. I mean, I hope, gave you, ma'am, and the group, some sense of how Muslims view Jerusalem. If I could, my friend would let me just take one more minute to speak another related issue of equal importance, perhaps more. I have all the admiration for everything that Professor Katz said about the Jerusalem. I think, if anything, it certainly stresses and underlies the fact of the interrelatedness he personally feels towards Jerusalem, and the interconnectedness the thought, the mind, and the group he represents have with Jerusalem. However, having said that, I think the most difficult issue of administering any question, particularly pertaining to Jerusalem, is the definition of the objective. If the objective is indeed to transform this conflictual locale into a more peaceful locale, particularly for each and every one of the groups that belongs and longs to Jerusalem. I indicated earlier, in my view, exclusivity, political and religious, exactly does the opposite. Not only that it leaves the question halfway, but it exactly turns it on its head, turns it upside down, and leaves absolutely no point of return. What I more specifically mean, sure, the question of Jerusalem is also political in nature, in addition to being religious. So I don't think that I would be aloof to that. However, even to achieve this political objective of capitalization of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, unified or disunified, eternal or temporary, the very makeup of the security and political parameters surrounding Jerusalem today. Certainly, I'm not speaking of that because I am Palestinian, but only because I think I have some, thought processes on that. The current makeup as it is today, exactly leads to the opposite result. The checkpoints have absolutely nothing to do with security. This is not what Hisham Ahmad says. I think I finished your question, ma'am. But absolutely. But if
I can refer to the works of the research works of the Kabbalah from Yaakov University, who's done a great deal of research on the entire genre of literature, love poems, religious poetry, which many in the audience are familiar with. It's very, very extensive throughout the centuries. Okay.
Thank you very much. Since it's obvious that I'm accused of taking a lot of time, I'll be very, very brief. Several issues. Number one, so that neither I nor Professor Katz, I think, not speaking for him, but my feeling, wholly prudent on my part to just say one word about what I was stating earlier when I was interrupted. The issue of Jerusalem is not settled yet politically. There's open negotiations. My view that the city can never be a unified, eternal capital, because this would be a recipe for an everlasting conflict, which is not what the whole war game is about. Number two, I know Minister Hisham personally. Candidly, I never heard him or read about him saying what the gentleman back there said, so I know nothing about it. I doubt, knowing him personally, I cannot see him saying what he said. He would certainly be rebuked by Arafat himself and plenty others, and certainly by his own thought process if he were to suggest what you basically refer to. So I know nothing about it, therefore I cannot deal with it. Number two, regarding the 48-67 years. Look, I'm Palestinian who was born Muslim. I have certainly read about what the Jewish community in Jerusalem has been subjected to under Jordanian rule in the period referred to above. I need not stress here that what they have gone through for all sorts of reasons is ugly, to say it bluntly, unacceptable, demeaning, destructive, and therefore cannot and should never be tolerated. I can't say much more about it, but that's not the time for it. To connect this point to the point raised by the gentleman in the back there, what have Arabs or Muslims done to Jerusalem over the past 1,000 years, and what's implied in the question is, what might they do in the future? Let me indeed reiterate what the very beautiful way Sister Abraham put it. As there is a Palestinian state, if any religious group is religious or otherwise, is discriminated against, unbelievers, Muslims, short people, tall people, etc., etc., I would certainly fight it the very same way I fight bigotry today and inhumane treatment, illegal treatment of others. That can never be the case. If it is, it will be against wills. Over the past 1,000 years, to the best of my knowledge, especially at the turn of this century, and this is quite a long subject, the three monotheistic religions in Jerusalem in the last century, in the late last century particularly, and I'm sure Professor Katz, there was quite an incredible inter-ethnic harmonious relationship in terms of neighborliness, in terms of religious practices, in terms of entrepreneurial relationship, etc., etc., etc. We are all to admit that conflicts indeed breed conflicts, and sadly enough, they breed sometimes massacres, sometimes unacceptable other forms of behavior, and sometimes prevention of certain religious groups to perform their beliefs. Does that mean that it's right? Of course not. But over the past 1,000 years, invariably there have been conflicts, but also there have been quite harmonious relationships, because Jerusalem has not been under Arab rule throughout this whole period so freely and so without any intervention from outside. I mean, we have to view things in perspective. Regarding the last question, why I see nothing wrong in it, personally. But I also told you earlier that I'm not that devout of a Muslim who sets the rules. Whether the Temple Mount is there at Aqsa Mosque or not, as you very well know, this is a most contestable issue. And if there is to be a breakdown of human psyche, we better try to prove it. Because rationality should rule otherwise. Irrationality would only lead to another fire, setting up another fire at the Aqsa Mosque, or continuing with the excavations and the digging underneath the mosque, at which point the whole sensation of the peace process will not only be a dream of the past or a fantasy of the present, will be an arduous cruelty of the future. Thank you.
November 8th, 1995, lectured, delivered as a panel, delivered as a part of a panel at the Hebrew Union College for the Interfaith Council. The panel is entitled Jerusalem, City of Religions.
Jet audio 0.